Hello everybody, Levi Clay here, and in today's video we are going back to Guitar Pro 8 and we are going to be talking about some of the new features available for notating drums and mixing drums more importantly, along with some tips and pointers that are going to help you use Guitar Pro 8 in order to create demos and write your own drum parts. If you do enjoy this, then I would suggest checking out the link to Guitar Pro 8. It's an affiliate link in the description. If you purchase it via that link, it supports the channel. Great piece of software. I'm sure you will get some use out of it. It's something, of course, that I'm using every single day. So if I'm using it every single day, there must be something decent in there. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. Also, you can check out a link to my Patreon page, another great way to support the channel. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, and you will be updated with lots of video content. Right, so let's move on over to Guitar Pro. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about when looking at this. So yeah, let's do it like this. So what we can see here is a drum track. We are going to come back to this in a second, but I just wanted to give you the ins and outs of how to go about setting up a new drum track. So if you do go to create a new file, you come on over here in your add track, you can select drums, and of course I'm always going to recommend that you just go for drums. The basic drum kit is going to be fine. We can deal with sounds at a later point, but there's lots of drum kit sounds that you can absolutely toy around with, and that's going to give you your basic drum kit setup. Now if I zoom in on that a little bit so you can see, now of course in Guitar Pro we can just add bars by adding right, but the thing I wanted to point out to you when doing this drum kit side of things, one of the big complaints that people often have about Guitar Pro, I know a lot of you guys were probably working in Guitar Pro 5 where you could notate using tablature, but of course you probably in Guitar Pro 7 were used to dealing in notation, and this was from a previous stream that I did. Again, we'll look at this in a second. This is all done in notation. If you do want to go back to using tablature, you can absolutely do that. So over here in this top left panel, show hide inspector. If we click on that, that's going to bring on our right panel here. And up under musical notation, if you click the tablature button, you're going to have tab for your drums. So you can absolutely notate using tab if you choose to. And of course, once you're needing to do that, you want to come up here into the top right. You want to select the show or hide virtual drum kit. That's going to give you this. Now this will show you every single drum, every single sound that you might need, and there's a selection down here that don't appear on there, and every single one of them has an associated MIDI number. So if I want a snare drum rim shot, that's 91 in tab, or we can see how we would notate that. Now, two ways you can input that. I'm just going to move this out of the way. You could literally come on over to the tab and you could key in the number 91, and that's going to give us that rim shot. Or we could actually literally just click on the sound that we want. So if we want that snare rim shot, it will be notated for us. So if you are going to be using tab, that is how you can be dealing with that. Let's jump on over to the drum stream transcription. This is from an old YouTube stream that I did on notating for drums. So let's just briefly talk about the key thing. I think the thing that was most enjoyable for me in Guitar Pro, in fact I'm going to throw my headphones on for this so I can hear it a little bit better. So the thing that I like most was the promise of being able to mix your drums in Guitar Pro, because the kits have a default sound and everything has a default volume, and that's fine, but what we realistically want to be able to do is to go in and mix the kit as we want it to sound. So we can do that, and again, in order to do that, we're going to use this panel over here on the right. What you want to do is you want to come over to your drum kit sounds. We want to click on this show or hide sound details, and down here under sound bank, you could go in here and this is where you could change your drum sound, you could change your drum kits, etc. But the missed feature, and they're not very good at explaining this, if you come on over to this button here, the bank settings, when you click on this, you'll then be given a mixing panel for the drum kit. So now if I take a loop, let's take something that has a few different drums in it. Evidently nothing in here is that interesting. Let's take something like this. So if I just set up a little loop on this, take that click off. Now what I can do with this is bring up that mixer panel, and I can see my kick drum, I can see my hi-hat, I can see my snare, and I can adjust the levels of those. To have everything appear where I want it, control the splash. This is a lovely feature to have featured in Guitar Pro because now we just have that option when we look at something like this where we've got a little bit of a fill. Let's do this. You know, we can listen to this and we can adjust things like the panning. When I hear that crash, I might want to shift that crash symbol over into the middle of the stereo field a little bit more. We decide where these appear. Maybe like this. Turn up my cymbals. Bring my kick drum up. We have all of these options now. We can absolutely control those. There are some other things that we can do with advanced editing of things. You can adjust the individual velocities of each note. Now, back in the day, you would do that with the literally using the dynamic markings here. But there's another video that I've got coming soon where we'll talk about adjusting individual velocities and also the placement of notes, where they fall in relation to the beat, etc. So that's the basic rundown of the mixing of drums. Now, a couple of pointers that I will give you that I have found to be useful. When you look over here in the effects chain, this is the compressor. Now, I have found for a lot of the stuff that I've been doing that these compressor settings are quite extreme and they make everything sound really, really rocky. So as a default now, I tend to go over here and I actually turn that compressor off. Now, if we listen to that in a live setting, here's it with the compressor off. Let's bring those cymbals back. And here's the compressor on. So when I'm working on something like this, I want my drums to be a little bit more subtle. So if we look over at my drum kit here, I've got those turned off, and now definitely a little bit more subtle. And it's something that I absolutely crave. So that's just a little tip for you. The only other tip that I wanted to go into just briefly is the idea of how to notate drums. Now, if you check out my drum stream where I did notation of drums and how to notate for drums, I talk about using multiple voices all the time. Now, what you can see here is that if you look at my notation, I'm using multiple voices. I've got both my kick and my snare pointing downwards with my hi-hats on the top with stems that point upwards. Now, this would be an example here, this particular fill, where you don't have that. When you look at this fill, you can see everything points upwards. And that was a conscious decision in the stream where I talked about the difference between these two things. The reason I encourage that is because actually it helps you to think a little bit more differently about the notation of the drums and how we're going to go about notating them. So just as a pointer for you, if I wanted to notate a kind of classic rock beat, we might say, okay, we'll put a hi-hat on every eighth note. And this totally works. You can put a hi-hat on every single eighth note like that. And then we might say, okay, well, I want my kick drum on 1, and then I want my snare drum on 2, kick drum on 3, snare drum on 4. And that absolutely works. You know, this is a classic rock beat. You've heard it a billion times. This absolutely works. The reason I prefer to notate things with upwards and downward stems is it enables you a little bit more control to go in and tweak, well, two things, dynamics, but then also adding notes. So if we look at this and I say, okay, well, actually on beat 3, I want my kick drum to sound both here but then also in the middle of this space. Now that would mean I'd need to change this to a 16th note, and then I need to insert a 16th note of rest, and then I need to go in and I need to put that new kick drum in there. Now, of course, that's possible. You can absolutely do it. It works. Not a beat that I'm ever going to write out, but you can absolutely do it. Also, let me turn that obnoxious compressor off. So you can do that. But if I wanted to write this same beat out using voices, I'm going to write what my cymbal is going to be doing using this upper voice. And this is default, okay? So if I just write that hi-hat in, like this. Now I can come over here into the top left and I can use this voice panel. So currently we've got multiple voices selected. We can see all the voicings. If I then select voice 2, they're all going to grey out. But now when I start notating my kick and snare drum, I can now notate my a lot more easily because I have the control to put things in nice and quickly. So this might be something that you find intimidating initially to look at, but I would just encourage you in the long run to start thinking about things like this, because I'm going to turn the tab off, because when I see this is both easier to write and easier to read as someone that plays drums. Some people do prefer this, but I'm absolutely fine with this. And now so when we go back to this drum stream and you look at the way I've notated Rosanna, for example, with that classic drum fill, when we look at this, you can see I've got my upward facing stems and I've got accents that I've put on there, and then I've got my downward facing stems for kick and snare, also ghost notes and everything. So when I listen to this, now I'm now listening to this and going, actually, I think that hi-hat's probably a little bit too much. Kick drum's also a little bit too much. Nice. So that's the basic rundown of how we can start dealing in notating drums in Guitar Pro 8 and some of the new features that are available to you. If you have any questions about those, please do let me know in that comment section below. And lastly, I want to say a huge thank you to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. I wouldn't be able to do this without your love, kindness and support. So if you want to get your name in that, also get access to private lessons with me, or my weekly guided practice routines, my weekly guided ear training sessions, hundreds of transcriptions to download, and just access to my private socials, Facebook groups, Discord and all that good stuff, then that is absolutely the place to do that. Again, link is in the description. If that doesn't suit, you can also head on over to Amazon, link in the description, and check out any one of my books. I have many available, and I am sure that you will find something that you enjoy. Thank you so much for checking this video out, guys. As I say, any questions, let me know in that comment section below. I've been Levi Clay, you've been awesome, and I will see you for more Guitar Pro 8 tutorials soon. Goodbye.